I think we're live. Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is Kathy, and we're here for another deep dive. Uh-oh. Hi. I caught it just in time. Forgot to mute. Anyway, um, so last night, I wonder if this is going to work if I turn it upside down. Hold on. I'm trying to set it in this holder here without getting disconnected. So last night I was talking about the two different accounts of Jesus' birth. What the heck is that thing up there for? Go away, duck. Those are the rules or something. What does it say? Live viewer comments show up on StreamYard. This is an example. Tap on a comment to show it on the stream. Yeah. I already know how it works. Anyway. But thanks anyway. Thanks for stopping by. So anyway, tonight I'm going to show you exactly what I was talking about last night, because I was talking about the two very different accounts of Jesus' birth. Well, actually the pregnancy and the birth. But we won't go into like the whole pregnancy thing, because I could go into that. That's different too. Really different. So anyway, that is the plan, Stan. We're gonna go through that. While I'm waiting here, a couple minutes, give anybody a chance to come in if they want to not miss anything. I'm looking for Bible Gateway because I need to pull up the. I got a lot of tabs open, so I gotta find it. All right. I mean, then we could go really deep into this, but I'm not going to go really deep into it, but enough to just show you how different these two stories are. But we could go really, really deep into it. Well, hey, Keto, how you doing? You're her. Good to have you here. Her. I hope you had a good day. Hope your Monday was good. Oh, yeah, today's Monday, 9/11/23. And it's September 11th. It's 9:48 p.m. So we're going to go into a couple things about this birth story that was added to the original gospel. Well, it was the original gospel was Mark, and then came Matthew and Luke. And I can't remember which one was first, if they even know which one is first. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I checked into the dates of things. But yeah, so let me just look. So yeah, I was talking about this last night. So I'm going to show you the contradictions, but I am looking for Bible Gateway. Anyway, I got a lot of tabs open, so each one states. Oh, my cat. See, every time I come on here, the cat takes full advantage. I just heard him knock a cucumber. He knocked a cucumber over. Anyway, this is what he does. Like a kid when mom's on the phone, they color all over the walls or whatever. Anyway, so let me pull up the scripture, because we are going to go over the story real quick. It's not real long. Where are we at? Oh, you know what? Did want to pull up a picture that describes perfect what I was saying last night. Last night I said I always laugh when the church stories add all the they add the one story of Luke and the different story of Matthew, and they just mush them together and make it one big story. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. I found this picture. It was perfect what I was talking about last night. Look at, I was looking for a different picture, but this one came up. I'm going to show you what it is. So. Oh, shit. All right, so it says, I got to get a book to get this up. It says, some of these people really don't belong in this picture. You know, this would be a good This would be a good. Which one of these does not belong? What was that? Sesame Street? I can't remember. Which one of these is not like the others? One of these things is not the same. One of these things does not belong in this picture. So what? I'll tell you how many things there's. Actually, this thing's jacked up because this picture is really jacked up. I just noticed lots of flaws with this picture. Anyway, so yeah, there's some things really wrong in this picture. Some of these people really don't belong in this picture, and that's exactly what I was talking about last night. This is what this is Matthew's story and Luke's story mushed together into one. Oh, by the way, they did not see a baby. They saw a baby. The shepherds, where is that? Where's the shepherd in the field? There's shepherd in the field, shepherd boy. Shepherd in the field saw a baby in a manger. The magicians and astrologers saw a 2-year-old Jesus running around the house or walking and maybe riding a trike or something. So these wise men saw a 2-year-old. The shepherd in the field saw babies, but they just put it into one big picture in your Christmas play. That is so funny. This is why I was laughing last night, because all your Christmas stories, it's, you know what this is like? It's like adding Gilligan's Island with the Brady Bunch. You know what I mean? You're all ears, okay. This is, like I said, this is like adding 2 different shows on TV. So this is like, you know, like I said, like Gilligan's Island, and this is Brady Bunch, but you're gonna make them all pose like they're in one show, and it's not. Anyway, I don't know how else to explain it. Let me grab. Hold on a second. Let's knock it over again. I need to grab a book to put this up on here. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so yeah, I'm going to show how horribly different these 2 stories are. Not even close. And then, and these were added, I'm telling you, because Mark was the first gospel written. Matthew and Mark Mark's original had nothing about Jesus' birth or childhood or nothing. And then later, Matthew and Mark wrote they copied off of Mark. Matthew and Luke copied off of Mark. And I can show that. We can go over that. There's 100% evidence about that. How they both, Matthew and Luke, took off of Mark, but Mark didn't take off of neither one of them. Mark is by far the original. And he didn't say any. His starts when Jesus is a full-grown adult. And then Matthew and Luke came along, and they had to add the what the Romans and the Greeks like, because they're spreading Christianity, which is Paul's religion. You know, Jesus was a Jew. He was Jewish. He did all the Jewish traditions, and really, so, and the Gospels didn't come along till long after after Paul wrote all his letters. Paul is dead by 65 AD. The Gospels haven't even been started yet. And so this movement that was going was Paul's movement. It had nothing to do with the Gospels or Jesus or anything. It was a Jesus movement, but was like Paul's religion. And so these Gospels are not written like by disciples, by no means. Mark is never even mentioned as a disciple, but he is mentioned in Acts as the traveling companion to Barnabas and Paul at times. That's the only Mark, and he's also called John Mark, I think. Is it John Mark? Yeah, I think it's John Mark or Mark. And he's also referred to as, I think, Barnabas's nephew at one point. But anyway, And of course, when the big blow up between Barnabas and Paul happens, Mark goes, his way with Barnabas, not Paul. So, obviously, because they're together. So, and Luke, as far as Luke goes, who's Luke? He's not even mentioned in the Bible, not once. There's not a Luke in the whole. Google Luke. Well, you can Google Luke. What you do is go on Bible Gateway and type in the word Luke. There's not one Luke mentioned in the whole Bible. But who is Luke? Well, in the book of Acts, according to Acts, which Luke wrote. Luke wrote the Gospel of Luke. Well, apparently that's who was. And then he wrote a second gospel, or let's see, what was it called? A gospel according to Luke, and then it was also the book of Acts. Luke wrote the book of Acts, and it was originally called Luke 2. It was Luke 1 and Luke 2. And then they changed that to the Gospel of Luke, and then Acts was changed to the Acts of the Apostles. So it's not like Luke and Matthew. Who's Matthew? Well, obviously Matthew. And now, anyway, that's a question. But anyway, so they got this Jesus movement going by Paul and throughout the land as the story goes. And so when Luke and Matthew copy off of Mark, and by the way, Mark isn't even the original writings about Jesus and his movement, but Mark is like the first account that is published anyway that we know of. But there are also other writings previous to that. But anyway, so Mark's the first gospel. Matthew and Luke springboard off of it and add a bunch of stuff. And then long time later, and those are called the synoptic gospels, Mark, Matthew, Luke, because they're all, Matthew and Luke are springboarding off of Mark, so they're all got a lot of similarities. And I could show you how they overlap. I even have a picture of how they overlap. Anyway, and then John, of course, comes later with his own whole other story. I've got eyeballs coming through the fence. I don't know if you can see the eyeballs. Yeah, eyeballs look blinking. And that, you see him blinking? It's a cat. All I saw is eyeballs blinking. That's funny. So anyway, what we're gonna do is kind of show you how different these two stories are. Why? Because Matthew wanted to come up with a story that was going to interest the pagan, what would you call them, pagans or new Christian converts, Greeks, Romans, whatever, the nation, Gentiles. And so Matthew comes up with his, because what is the culture there? What is the culture in Rome? We've gone over, for months, we've gone over all the Roman and Greek gods and all these gods, Olympian gods and everything else. And all the gods, like what the people like, what do people like? They like the virgin birth gods. And we've gone over that. We maybe sometime we'll go over it again. It's been a year or two. But I mean, in Rome and all these places that these people are, they are accustomed to these gods that have certain things in common. Dying and rising gods. And these are usually sun worshiping gods. They die and they rise again, always on December 21st to the 25th. So that's why they always have, that's why you have all these pagan celebrations, it's winter solstice and all this other stuff. Is pagan worship is December 25th, because that's when all the pagan gods are. They die and rise. They die, the sun dies. They're all sun gods that die on the 21st or 20th or something, and is dead for 3 days, and then the sun rises again. So that's why your sunset on the 20, well, actually it's the 10 days of Christmas, he could call it, because for 10 days before the 25th, the sun kind of stands still. It dies. So instead of getting the days shorter to the shortest it can possibly get on December 20th, it just sits there. Like say the sunset was 4:23 or something. It'd be 4:20, 4:20, 5, 24, 23, 23, 23. For 3 days, it'd be the same sunset. And then the sun, as the pagans all saw, would rise from the dead and overconquer the winter. So on the 21st, the sunset gets longer. Instead of 4:23, it goes 4:24, 4:25, 4:26. And then, so after December 25th, your days start getting longer. So that is the death and the rise of the sun every year. And the sun conquers these other not sun gods or whatever. So anyway, so that's why they have to have Jesus on the December 25th, right? That's why these churches celebrate. Everybody thinks his birthday is December 25th, because that's when all the pagan sun gods die and for 3 days and rise again. Oh, hey, good to see you, John. That was the angel of Christ crucified. What? Which one? Hey, John, good to see you. Hey, I hope you've been doing well. How's things going? Good to see you tonight. So people that worship pagan sun gods have the winter solstice and the December 25th thing. And and really, if you study the Gospels, you can do the math. We know women are pregnant for 9 months. We know that according to the story, and I think it's only in Luke, I think, was where Mary, her cousin, origin of Christ. Oh, yes, exactly. That is the origin of Christ crucified. That's right. Because Christ is crucified, and 3 days later he rises from the dead, which actually doesn't matter. The math ain't good. The math is not there. They tried to fudge that and do the 3 days, but no. Get a counter and count in your head or whatever on your fingers. If you die at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon and you rise at 5 a.m., 6 a.m. on Sunday morning, that's a day and a half. That is not 3 days. But the pagan gods die and rise after 3 days. So they just say 3 days, and people, it would be Monday. It would be Monday at 3 p.m. is when you would rise if it's 3 days and 3 nights. I mean, it's really easy to figure out. He died at 3 p.m. on a Friday, and actually, who knows? He could have rose sooner than that. But they saw the empty tomb, according to which gospel you read, because they're all different. As a matter of fact, the first gospel written was Mark. And the first gospel written, the first story is that they went to the tomb, and I can't remember why. I don't even know if they had a reason, but they went to the tomb after Sabbath, and they saw that the tomb was empty, and they were scared, and they ran away and never told nobody. The end. That's where the original Mark ends. And then like a year, like decades or maybe 100 years later, long time, many years later, when everybody else had the death and resurrection story, they added the death and resurrection chapter 16 to Mark. And that's easy to research and find out for yourself. I'm glad I'm done with it. Yeah, right, John? People are so cruel in Christianity. I could never go back to that. I know, John. And you know what? We just went over the other day. Even Paul, they all say that truth is in there. And Jesus himself said the 2 greatest commandments: love God above yourself and love all others as yourself. That's it. That's it. That's the 2 biggest rules. And you know what? A lot of people in Christianity fail both. I mean, just hateful to everybody and judgmental and everything else. I'm glad too, John. I'm glad I'm done with it too. Because it didn't make sense. Nobody even knows if they're doing anything right or wrong because everybody's disagreeing. The manual's screwed up. Nothing's clear. If God wrote that, then why is it all confusing? You know what I mean? And it's so weird because Jesus flat out said, I'm only here for the Jews. And then but then in the book of Acts, well, even the Gospels. Well, actually, the clearest that we have is in the book of Acts. Let's put that. But that's after Jesus dead and gone. In the book of Acts, Peter first gets assigned. First, Peter gets assigned by God Himself in the sheep lowering down with the animals story. He gets personally assigned to go send the message to the Gentiles, right? And then out of nowhere comes Paul, and he says, "No, I'm the one sending this Gentile message." But when Jesus was alive, he said, "No, this message is for the Jews." It's just like, wait a minute. He said it. He said to the Jews. Now he's gone. And remember, Jesus said, what was one of the last things he thought? He warned everybody. All right, now after I'm dead, if somebody says, "Lo, there he is," if somebody comes to you and says, "I saw Jesus out in the wilderness," don't believe him. And then Paul comes along and says, "Hey, I saw Jesus in the wilderness," and everybody believes him. And then Jesus said, "Me, you don't follow what I do, because he told you to follow the rules of the Jews." But he said, "The one that comes after me, you're gonna love him, because he's gonna let you do whatever you want." And that's Paul. And you know what? Anyway, I don't want to get too off track. Salvation is supposed to be the most important thing for Christianity, yet the New Testament never outlines a clear step-by-step plan for salvation. Very strange, isn't it? Yeah, John, you know what? I, you know what? I'm going to recommend a channel, because I don't usually do that. But I love listening to this guy, and he's an atheist. I'm not an atheist and never will be, because ever since I was born and a little child, I've had God in my life, a presence. I don't know what it is. It's a presence. It's God. And it's so funny, because after thousands of hours and on here studying and 2,500 live streams of studying, and all these years of studying, I've gone full circle. I went from always knowing my whole life for 50 years that there's a God, and there's, like, when I really need him and I yell for him, yell for help, he's there, and I get a miracle. There's too many miracles to ever think that there's not a God. For me personally, my opinion, I have just could never say no, there's no God, because no, I'd have to throw away a whole life, decades, many decades of having things that were just unexplainable and life changing. And anyway, and I know that when I do good, I get rewarded. When I do bad, I get punished. And it seems, I don't know if it's karma or what you call it, but there's always been like a spiritual presence where it just I don't know. Anyway, that's just the way I felt. So I would never be an atheist, but there's a guy that I watch, and I could listen to this guy forever. Um, he now he's an atheist, but he mostly focuses on so many contradictions and how so messed up the Bible is, and the theories and everything. And so I'm going to show you. I'm going to give you a link to this, because I think he's an atheist. I'm pretty sure, and I don't know why or anything about it, but but he makes a very good case against how messed up Christianity is. In fact, here, let me see. So maybe I'll do it when I'm done. No, I already went this far with it. Yeah, I love listening to him. And he was gone for a little bit, but he's back now doing live streams. So I'm gonna put a link to his channel. His name is James Apperson. Here a second. John, I think you would like it. I think you would like this channel. You don't. because it shows you the common sense stuff that we have seen, you and I have seen, and several people on this channel. Common sense things that just don't make sense in Christianity. And I mean, and so he really points out mostly the things that are absurd about certain things in the Bible. And it doesn't matter what faith you are. There's Christians that come on here. There's atheists. There's all people absolutely are welcome on this channel. But anyway, James Appleson, I really like the channel. I'm going to put a link to it. This was good. What is the gospel? A beginner's guide to eternity. John, you should listen to that. Anyway, I'm going to put a link to this channel. I really like his channel. Oh, wait, I can't do it that way. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can do it that way. I can put a link up. Like when they say it's not religion, it's Jesus Christ, and you better get it right with him. All right. Oh, John, you're going to like this channel. You're going to like this channel. Here, I'm going to write his name. James Apperson. I don't want to get his name wrong. Oops. Yeah. Oh, crap. Oh, let's put emoji up. I wasn't looking. Anyway. Yeah, I like his channel. I've listened to it since he, pretty much since he came on. He hasn't been on that long. I can't remember. Maybe a year. I can't remember. I think you should have more subscribers. I really do. YouTube, 8 person. Okay, I think this is it. Copy. And there it is. There's a link to his channel. Yep. I mean, he points out the real obvious flaws with Christianity, and it's funny, man. I laughed my butt off because yeah, check that out, John. You're gonna like it. Oh man, you're gonna like it, John. I know you will. Because he points out such obvious just flaws left and right. Like when he talks about the pencils down moment that everybody had. Yeah, check that channel. I really like his channel. He's got a very calm voice, and I could just listen forever. I put my headphones on. He's got long live streams. I was out weed whacking and doing all kinds of stuff, cutting my grass, and I just listen. He's funny. Yeah, I think he's funny. He's good to a good listen. Anyway, so and what I hope doesn't happen for people is once that I mean, everybody I think is born knowing that there's some kind of God or something. Maybe they're not. I don't know. I was just kind of born knowing that there was a God. Yeah, I went to church, grew up in church and all that, but I didn't really know the Bible, and I always knew that there was a God and a presence and all that, and right and wrong, and the basics. You know what I mean? That everybody kind of I think is born with. You don't need a book for it. You don't need to study. And yeah, he just points out such obvious stuff. Anyway, I really like it. So we will move on with what we were talking about. So, but yeah, I think he should have more subscribers. I like it. I like his channel. But yeah, I would hope that like once you see really how like flawed a lot of things are in the Bible, I just hope like because some people might think, well, if the Bible's flawed, there's no God then. Well, no, God, like God's not taking responsibility for that Bible or any other book. You know what I mean? And if God wanted everything written in a book, it'd be a perfect book. And there's a lot of stuff that he points out. Yeah, I really like it. And when I did the Romans chapter 2 study, it was he gave me the idea watching one long time ago. He had a video like last year. I can't remember. It was kind of a long time ago about Romans chapter 2. Tells you flat out, everybody, even if you're not even a Jew, even if you're non-religious, even if you have no religion, you're all judged on your behaviors. I had a one save, always save, gave me a nasty comment on that video. You know, it's all right. Like most of the time, I don't really care about nasty comments. I like to leave them up so people see because it's kind of funny. But like sometimes when I wake up like first thing in the morning, and I see a comment like nasty comment, I come with both barrels, man. Block, remove, both barrels. No hesitation. And but like later in the day, if I saw a comment like that, I'd be like, that's funny. You know what I mean? But like first thing in the morning, I haven't even cleared my head yet. It's just like it's like a bear jumping out from behind a bush, and I'm like, bam, bam. You know what I mean? No, and then but yeah, so I almost regret removing it because I just saw it so early in the morning. Anyway, all right, let's get back to this. Oh, all right, so so the story, there's two stories. We're gonna read them quick because I believe there is a God, but I don't think we know who God is, how God operations, and what the plan. Me too, John. I agree. I believe that there's a presence that, and it hasn't been written in a book who God is because it would be just like the books that everywhere they're screwed up. I've been pointing out these contradictions for years now. And that's why God wouldn't put his message in a book. Or, you know what else? Another thing James Apperson points out. Do you know how flawed of a system it would be? That you have to, oh my God, you just got to watch him. Because he said, in order to believe, in order to understand the Bible, you have to have the Holy Spirit. Okay, how do you get the Holy Spirit? Well, you have to believe. Well, I haven't read the book yet. How can I believe in a book I haven't read yet? Well, right. Well, you have to believe, and once you believe, you get the Holy Spirit, and then you'll understand the book. So I have to believe in the book before I read it. Anyway, yeah, a lot of flaws there, and it's hidden messages. What do you mean hidden messages? Why is it hidden? Why is it hidden from some people? Is that fair? What if you're the one that it's hidden from? Try and figure out who God is, and this, it's hidden. Anyway, all right. So the birth of Jesus in Matthew is Matthew and Luke basically kind of start out. What should we do first? You know what? I want to do Luke first because Luke is shorter, much shorter. A lot shorter of a story, and thousands of miles on foot less. But who's counting, right? Came up with the NIV. I guess I'm not going to be picky. It really don't matter. See, people are brainwashed. Oh, the NIV is a devil's book. So, like, he points out, not only do you have to believe in a book and then write, but you got to hope that you find the right book and then hope you have the right version of the right book. And so if you have the wrong version of the right book, you might be damned. If you happen to find the right book, but the wrong version of the right book. Anyway. So. Oh, Yeah. Okay. So first, we're just going to read the two nativities stories. One in Luke, one in Matthew. Luke is a shorter one. Yeah, I don't think God cares about being worshipped and glorified by us, since God has never formally introduced himself to us, whoever got it. You're right, John. And you know what, as he points out also, you will enjoy his videos, I think. He points out that that is a very narcissistic God, that if you don't worship him, you're gonna burn forever. And it's just like, yeah, he points out a lot of obvious things that are very flawed. And uh, uh, you know, if everybody's God's children, why would he have some of his children go kill other of his children? Can you imagine having like 12 kids and you want like 4 of them to go kill the other 8 because they're not believing in the right thing? Anyway, yeah, I think what the Old Testament is the Hebrews' idea who God is. Gods, multiple gods actually. And I think the New Testament is the Romans' idea of who God is. The new God, the latest, the newest. You talk about new religion, new age religion. People are calling like ancient religions new age, which is so funny because no, the new age religion is Christianity because that's the most recent one. Besides like the spaghetti monster, whatever some other new ones they came up with. But the newest religion is Christianity. That's your new age religion. I mean, you can't call ancient thousands of years before Christianity. You can't call that new age. Mm. Again, who's counting, right? All right, so let's get to the birth of Jesus according to Luke. Where are we at here? The camera, there it is. It ain't turning on. All right, so here, let's just read it. It is what, 19 verses long. And this is Luke chapter 2. And it goes from verse 1 to 20. So I guess that's 20 verses. In those days, Caesar Augustus, take a note, Caesar Augustus, all right? Because this is Luke. Luke thinks Caesar Augustus was running the place, okay? Now, in those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was, and I'm going to go over why this can't be. And I kind of touched on it last night, but I'm going to show you in writing why it can't be. So a decree that, so Caesar Augustus, remember, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that the census should be taken of the entire Roman world. Now, here we have a little bit of corrupt text because it's not original. It was added by the translator because it's in parentheses. Anytime something's in parentheses, it means that it was added by the translator and is corrupt. But it's added by the translator with the intention of helping the reader understand, or get a clearer picture, understand what they're saying. It's supposed to help, but sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it. Anyway, I could go into that too. We should go into that sometime because I could show you where just one little thing in parentheses so many times changed the entire thing because they thought it would be helpful, or maybe they're doing it on purpose. I don't know. I think it's both. Sometimes the one, sometimes the other. But anyway, so in parentheses says this was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. Let's see. So see footnote. Oh, see, that's why I like the blue letter one because you don't have to go to the bottom for the footnote. Or this census took place before. Okay. So talking about the census. So this was the first census since he took over, since Quirinius took over. And everyone went to their own town to register. And that makes no sense. Can you imagine if they, you know how they just had the census in 2020 or whatever it was? Can you imagine everybody had to go to their hometown to fill out your census? The airports would be packed, train stations would be clogged up. Anyway, freeways would be blocked at standstill. Anyway, and these people are on foot back then. Anyway, and everyone went to their own town to register. That's funny. So Joseph, and you can look into that. Look into the history of that. Is it normal for in the first century? Was it normal? And like around one BC or 1 AD, is it normal that people would go to their own hometown to register for a census? Yeah, they had census back there. Heck yeah. Do you think they go to their hometown? Go check it out. Do your homework. Find out if people would have gone back to where they were born to do a census. It's ridiculous. But check it out yourself. Don't believe me? Or take my word for it. Figure I would look that up yourself. I did. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea. All right. From Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and the line of David. Okay, so I'm going to make a footnote here myself. The goal of Matthew and Luke, and one thing that what these authors want to put in the reader's mind is that Jesus is from the bloodline of David, okay? Because these people really don't understand the Jewish prophecy of the Messiah. And the Jewish prophecy of Messiah said he's going to come from the bloodline of David, not the hometown of David. Big difference. David doesn't even live in the hometown that he had. You know what I mean? So because they don't really understand Jewish prophecy, they think that they have to prove that Jesus came from Bethlehem. And that's, you know why? Because it's the only way that they can connect Jesus to King David. Why? Because he's supposed the Messiah from the Old Testament that the Jews are waiting for, and they were waiting. All kinds of people were coming as the Messiah back then. They were waiting. Is he the Messiah? Is this the Messiah? Is he the Messiah? So everybody's waiting for the Messiah because they're under pressure in Jerusalem. They're overtaken by Romans, and they're under their rule. And they want the whole point of the Messiah is to restore the land to Israel, to give them back their land. I mean, so the Messiah's job is to take back Jerusalem and give it back to the Jews and let them live happily ever after. And that person is going to come, his great-great-grandfather, whatever, grandfather's grandfather, his bloodline is going to be a direct descendant of King David. So, but how can you do that if you claim, hey, Grace, good to see you. Right, John is correct. So the lineage is only counted on the father's side of the family. They don't care who the mother is. It's on the father's side. You have to go from King David down to Solomon, down to blah, 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 blah. And we can go through that. So we've gone through that many times. In fact, we can go over that tomorrow night. We can go over it tomorrow night. How desperately Matthew and Luke both tried to prove that Jesus was from the bloodline of David. In this story, they're trying to prove by saying he's going back to his hometown where David lived. They think they're going to prove it this way. Why? Because you can't do a blood test on God. Now, if Joseph is not the father of Jesus, I could go all night on that. We'll do that tomorrow night. Jesus is the Messiah is a no-go. That's right. You cannot. So if you had a family tree, imagine that. Have a family. So imagine you go to Ancestry.com and you want to find out your ancestry, you want a family tree made up or whatever, one of those ancestry places, pay a bunch of money. But you tell them that your mom is, Mary, Anderson. Okay, and what's your father's name? God. Yeah. You can't do that. You can't do it. You can't do it ancestry.com if you just have the mom and not the dad. Especially if ancestry.com, like the Jewish people only go off the father. You can leave the mother off the family tree. The Jewish people go by only the father. So your family tree has only dads on it. Your dad, his dad, his dad, and his dad, and his dad's dad before him. They're all dads. It's a family tree of just dads. And so if you either Joseph is on that dad tree or he's a no-go. And so what they're trying to do is two different ways they're going to try to fudge it. They're going to try to prove that Jesus is from the line of David because they can't do it through the daddy. One way is this story here where they have to go back to the hometown of Bethlehem because, that's where David was. That's going to prove to you and me that he's originally from Bethlehem because of this census. Because of this census story that makes no sense. They're going to get you down, and Luke is doing the same thing, but Luke's got his own story why they're going down there. Matthew has a different story, but both of them want Jesus being born out of Bethlehem because both don't understand Jewish tradition and both think Jesus has to be born in Bethlehem, which is not the case. So, and tomorrow we can go over the second way both Matthew and Luke tried to prove that Jesus was from the bloodline of David, is we'll go over that tomorrow. Completely fudged. So badly fudged, it's laughable. We'll have a good laugh. Bring your popcorn, because this bloodline thing is really ridiculous. We'll go over that tomorrow. So they're both going to have this story why Jesus is born in Bethlehem, which was not in Mark's original story. But so not only do they want the virgin birth, but they want him born in Bethlehem. So this is why these wild stories are made up. Luke's got his wild story, Matthew's got his wild story, and neither one of them are close to each other. It's so weird. It's like a story where everybody and it's the same thing about being born out of Egypt. Like, what is up with that? Everybody's, for some reason, has to be born out of Egypt. Oh, he floated down a river in a basket when he's a baby. He got put into slavery. Joseph, Moses, all of them. And even Jesus comes out of Egypt. Like, what? Anyway. But they always have to okay, he's got to come out of Egypt, but how are we going to do it? How are we going to do it? I know. So, you know what I mean? And that's what they do with, in the New Testament here with Jesus. Okay, somehow we know he's from Nazareth, but somehow he's got to be born in Bethlehem. How are we going to have him? I know. Let's have him chased by a bad guy, and then he has to go there. Okay, great. And then the other people well, how are we going to have him born in Bethlehem? I know. We'll make an angel tell him to go there because there's a census. And so they each came up with a story. So we'll read each of their stories. This is Luke's story, his version of why did they have to get down to Bethlehem? Because they think it's very important Jesus is born in Bethlehem. But it's not. It's not going to prove he's the Messiah. Anyway. So Joseph went up from the town of Nazareth. On the map, it's down. Nazareth is up and Galilee is down. So I'm not sure why they said up. Anyway, so then we'll look at the map. I'll show you the map in a second. So Joseph went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David. Because why? Because why are you telling us this? It's going to prove that he's from the bloodline of David. Because he belonged to the house and the line of David. Oh, I see. So if you go and so I guess anybody who was born in Bethlehem is from the house of David, from the bloodline of David. This does not prove But they had to throw that in there. In Galilee, in Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and the line of David. It doesn't prove he does. A blood test would do, or a birth record. A family tree would prove it, but they don't have a family tree, so they're going to have to try to prove it this way. He went there to register with Mary. Now get this. I've never heard anybody talk about this. Mary and Joseph weren't even married when Jesus was born. They still weren't married. Where's the wedding? There was no wedding. They almost called off the wedding, but they still were engaged. There's no wedding. It says right here. It says, okay, so they went down to Bethlehem because, they got to go register for this whole census thing. So Mary being 9 months pregnant, they're on a mule going cross country to the desert. Anyway, he went there to register with Mary, okay, for the census, which would mean that Mary was born in Bethlehem. Wouldn't Mary need to go register where she was born? And who said Mary was born in Bethlehem? Anyway, he went there to Bethlehem to register, for the census. So he went to Bethlehem to register the census with Mary. Remember her? Who was pledged to be married, still engaged. She's about to give birth, I don't know, that next day. So they're still engaged, but she's 9 months pregnant. But they go to the place to get registered. So he went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. Okay, so we see that why did they go to Bethlehem? Because of this census. But when they went there, it was time for the firstborn to be born, a son. She wrapped him in clothes and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. Because, everybody's coming from all over the world back to where they were born, to Bethlehem. And they always say it was a one-horse buggy town. So it was it's a very small town. And I think there was actually, anyway, it was a very small town. And so I don't even know if they had I don't know. Anyway. So, okay. So this is what you always hear in the school plays or the church plays. All right. So she gave birth to the firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in clothes and put him in a manger because there's no guest room available for them. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch of their flocks at night. This is why it is not December 25th, okay? Because 2 reasons. And especially because this is Luke. Luke has already told you at extents that Mary's sister Elizabeth was giving birth to John the Baptist 6 months earlier. And that was at Passover. So at Passover, Mary's cousin Elizabeth gives birth to John the Baptist in the springtime, which is Passover, which is late March, early April, depending on whatever year it is. So if you count from March, you count, and when Jesus was in Mary's womb, and Elizabeth, John the Baptist was in her cousin's womb, when they met, they hugged. The babies both leaped for joy. Jesus leaped for joy in the womb, and John the Baptist leaped for joy. So that was the first time they met in the womb. Now, Elizabeth is 6 months pregnant with, or ready to give birth. So she's 9 months pregnant with John the Baptist, ready to give birth. Mary is only 3 months pregnant with Jesus. So that's 6 months apart, right? So if John the Baptist is born in March, Jesus is born 6 months later, what would that be? April, May, June, July, August, September. Jesus, and a lot of people think he's born September 11th, 9/11. So today would be his birthday. People think that. A lot of people think that, actually. But it is probably September, and it probably at the very latest. Depends how late Passover is at. In fact, you could figure it out. They got records when, well, here's the problem. Here's the big problem. You can't figure it out because they don't know if Jesus was born at 5 BC, 4 BC, 3 BC, 2 BC, and 1. So anywhere from 5 BC to like 1 or 2 AD. So every year Passover is on a different day. So it's anywhere. So we don't know. If you don't know what year he's born, you can't see what year Passover was. If we knew he was born in 2 BC, we could look up and Passover would be on this date, and you could count. You know exactly when Jesus' birthday was. We can't do that because we don't know what year Jesus was born. And as a matter of fact, even that's contradicting. It's contradicting because some say Herod was in charge, and this what did he just say? This one says Caesar Augustus is in charge. So they can't even get. Is he in charge? Because that's 1 year. If Herod is in charge, remember that's going to be Matthew's story. Herod. Hi Omar, good to see you. No, he does not match any of the criteria for the Jewish Messiah. Not a single one. That's right. That's right. We could go over that sometime. Good to see you, Omar. So Jesus had to be born in September, either September and maybe the first. And here we go. And the reason I brought this up because it says right here, and there were shepherds living out in the field nearby, watching over their flocks at night. Do you know in Israel that in the fall, the shepherds go out in the field and they live out there until they get all the sheep and bring them in? And that takes up until about the beginning of October because it gets cold. And there's no way in tarnation that you're going to have shepherds in a field in the end of December. No way. No way, no how. It's like me saying I'm planting corn on Christmas in the snow. No, it would never happen. You would never have shepherds living in the fields nearby, watching their flocks at night in December, and not November either. Not even in the late October. Listen, by probably the second week in October, they're done. So this is definitely the second clue. Now here's your second clue that Jesus is probably born in September. A, it was 6 months after Passover when John the Baptist's second cousin was born. And B, the shepherds are in the field. So yeah, none of these, there's no way he would be born in December. And that just more backs up the theory that they're going for the sun worship or December 25th thing. You know what I mean? And we've gone over that. There's 12 different gods that claim Christmas as their birthday, and they were all long before Jesus. Anyway, and there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. The angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord." Now the angel's telling this to the shepherds in the field. He's telling there's like 2 or 3 shepherds in the field, and God sent the angel to tell these people that this Savior is going to make everybody happy. They didn't say what kind of Savior, and you know what? the town of David, in the town of David, a savior. They didn't really say Messiah or the Old Testament Messiah. All right, it says he is the Messiah, the Lord. Oh, yeah, there you get. I guess they did. This version does. All right, it does. The Messiah, the Lord. Now, this is interesting. This is a sign. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger. So I guess they have to go find it. Suddenly, a great company of the heavenly host appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in heaven, and earth, uh, and on earth peace to those on whom He favor rests." Okay, so if He favors you, you're gonna have rest. This is always a line in the church play. Lord, and then even on Charlie Brown, some people know that this line right here from Charlie Brown Christmas: "Peace and will to all good men." Remember that Charlie Brown Christmas? When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about." So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger, so just born. When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told to them about this child. Okay, what was told to them about the child? It was a savior, a Messiah, and all people will love him. That's what their job was to do. Go tell everybody that. And which the Lord has told us about. So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. When they see him, they spread the word concerning what they had been told to them about this child, and all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherd said to them. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. She treasured up all things, pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen, which were just as they had been told. All right, so that's his story, and he's sticking to it. Oh, we're gonna read the full chapter because you know what? There's something important here. I'll probably be going a little bit longer here, so let's see. So, manger. Here's what I want to show you. All right, so then there's only like 2-3 shepherds, and I guess they went and told everybody what they saw. On the 8th day, and this is a Jewish custom, on the 8th day, when it was time to circumcise a child, he was named Jesus, and the name the angel had given him before he was conceived. And that's funny because in the Old Testament, and it's even repeated in the Gospel of John, which is weird. But they even repeat it. Now, the Messiah, they said, and his name will be, what did they say his name was? And it means God with us. Anyway, it's not what his name was. And then the angel told, I think Mary to call him Jesus, told somebody to call him Jesus. And the name the angel had given him before he was conceived. Remember the angel? I think it was Joseph or Mary. I can't remember. He told one of them that his name would be Jesus. So then, when the time came for the purification rites required by the laws of Moses, which, is the 8 days, and then Mary had to purify herself, which Joseph and Mary took him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord, as is written in the law of the Lord. Every firstborn male is to be consecrated to the Lord and to offer a sacrifice in keeping with what is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of doves or 2 young pigeons. It depends. If you can't afford the doves, then you get the 2 pigeons. Now, the other day we were talking about this. Somebody says, the Mandela effect that says 2 turtles. No. King James might say turtles or turtle doves because Grace looked it up. So thanks, Grace. She looked it up. The word, Old English word for doves is turtle. And so that's why the word turtle in King James went from turtle to turtle dove to just dove. So it's not a Mandela effect. Doves used to be called turtles in Old English. So, and if you see Old English, like Shakespeare language, like King James Version, yeah, it might say turtles because it starts out, they call doves turtles. And that's why turtles morphed into turtle doves, and that morphed into doves. So anyway, but that was the sacrifice that they gave, 2 doves or 2 young pigeons. Anyway, so that's Luke's story. Pretty simple, right? And then they went back. Yeah, presented the tape. Anyway, so then they went back to their home. All right, end of story for that. Now we're going to go through Matthew's story. Now, I'm going to show you a map. Now, I used to have a better map, but I don't know where it is. I used to have a color-coded map, but anyway, I'm going to show you this pretty much same map. If I can find it. I've got so many tabs open right now. I'm going to show you a map of the, here's one. I'm going to show you a map of the route that Luke told you what just happened, okay? So in Luke's version, what we just read, they live in Nazareth. Here's Nazareth up here. Here's the Sea of Galilee, Capernaum. This is where Jesus did the ministry. Here's Nazareth. The wedding at Cana is about halfway between there. Anyway, so Jesus grows up in Nazareth. That's where his mom and dad are from. Or Jesus, Mother Mary and Joseph are living in Nazareth. But there's a census down here in Bethlehem. All right, it's kind of a ways. Here's just to show you. I'll back up. There's a Mediterranean Sea, Sea of Galilee. There's a Dead Sea all the way down here. So they went from Nazareth for the census. they were told to go down to Bethlehem. So they go all the way down here to Bethlehem. So they went from Nazareth to Bethlehem in the story of Luke we just read. All right. Now I want to show you this a little closer here if I can. Here's a route they just took. It's going to be way different here in the next story. But this is a pretty simple story, pretty straightforward. A weird reason why they got him down to Bethlehem to have the baby born there, but whatever. They think they're fulfilling prophecy by doing that, but they're not. Because they don't understand the Jewish writing. So anyway, prophecy. So anyway, so here's Nazareth. They go down here to Bethlehem, down here to register. I mean, to register for the census. And then while they're there, Mary goes into labor and has the baby Jesus in Bethlehem. So after the baby's born, at 8 days, the baby's circumcised. And they said after Mary's purification, and I can't remember if it's 30 days after you give birth, I can't remember. But after the purification date, they went in Jerusalem, and so he was probably circumcised by a mohel or something, some Jewish mohel. And then after the purification of Mary, which I think is 30 days, I can't remember. Well, it's different. If it's a boy, you're unclean. You're unclean for a shorter amount of time. It's like, I don't know, it's like 2 weeks if it's a boy or 4 weeks if it's a girl, which does make no sense. But if you have a boy, it's a less amount of time. So you can look that up. Once a woman gives birth, she's impure for, you offer the 2 turtle doves, and you're impure for a certain amount of time for boys and a longer time for girls. So since it was a boy, it was a certain amount of time. They went from Bethlehem here, they had the baby, After the circumcision, 8-day circumcision, after the purification, they go up here to Jerusalem to the temple to register him. That's what they said. Then after that, they went back to Nazareth, and this is where Jesus grew up, happily ever after, right? That's Luke's story. All right, so he goes from Nazareth down here to Bethlehem, registering, has baby. It's shortly after, 30 days probably less, registers him in Jerusalem temple, goes back there. So what was that, 2-month excursion maybe? Whatever. Now here's Matthew's story. In Matthew's story is this. Now, we're going to read it, but I'm going to show you. Here's a pre-cap or whatever, a preview. In Matthew's story, they're also starting out in Nazareth up here. Matthew starts out Mary and Joseph up here in Nazareth. Also, same starting spot. Why did God need 2 dead birds? He doesn't. It's ridiculous to kill an animal for anything. God, and I don't believe the real God needs anything dead or killed. I think sacrifice is disgusting and makes no sense. Why killing an innocent animal would get you off the hook for anything? Yeah, I don't agree with that. Good to see you tonight, Galax. Hope you had a great day. So in Matthew, they also start out in Nazareth. Okay, but Matthew also thinks for some reason Jesus has to be born in Bethlehem. So Matthew's thinking, think. Why? How are we going to get... If Matthew thinks that Jesus needs to be born in Bethlehem, he's got to come up with a darn good reason why he's here when Mary gives birth. He says, I know. We'll have a bad guy chase him out of the area. And when he stumbles through Bethlehem, Mary will have birth there, and bam, he's the Messiah because he's born in Bethlehem. All right, so Matthew has got his own story why they're going to give birth in Bethlehem. A whole different story. His is being not the census that you got to go register at. Matthew's story is going to be a bad guy, King Herod. Ooh, jealous, heard about the baby. He's got to go. So they take off. And they end up, they're all the way down here, like getting chased by the bad guy. And here's where she gives birth, and bam, it's in Bethlehem. So bam, that's the line of David, right? Since you ain't got no paternity papers to come up with. Anyway. And then, okay, so you think that's the end of the story? They're just going to go back and purify and do all that other stuff like Luke and go back home? Nope. The story is barely starting. No, they're going to start in Nazareth. They're going to get chased by King Herod, the bad guy. And somehow, get this, back in Nazareth, John the Baptist is here with Elizabeth and Zechariah, his mom and dad. So how come Elizabeth, Zechariah, and John the Baptist, somehow he didn't get killed by Herod? And there's no record of Herod killing everybody, all the babies under 2. But anyway, we'll see that story. But anyway, so really, and then people say, well, John the Baptist lived in the wilderness with his parents. Well, maybe they might have been Essenes, and the Essenes did live on the outskirts in caves. And a lot of people say Jesus was an Essene too, Essene, Essene. Anyway, people say, oh, John the Baptist was an Essene, and they were living in caves, and that's why Herod didn't find him. Anyway, all kinds of excuses. But anyway, so in Matthew, they start out there. They go down here while they're running from Herod. The baby's born. But what happens? I think it's Joseph. One of the Gospels, I can't remember which is which. I think Luke favors Mary, and I think Matthew favors Joseph. It's either vice versa. So in one of the Gospels, the angel gives all the messages to Mary. And I think that's Luke. Because Luke really props Mary up. Luke makes Luke makes Jesus the cousin of John the Baptist, well, the second cousin, and makes Mary the cousin to John the Baptist's parent. You know what I mean? So Luke really props up Mary. So I think it is Luke. But anyway, when in one of them, one gospel, the all the messages from the angels go to Joseph, and the other gospels, all these messages are going to Mary. And I think it's anyway. So they're down here in Bethlehem, and Jesus is born, which I guess proves he's from the bloodline of David. Anyway, after the birth, another message. What was it say this time? Well, the angel's telling, I think it's Joseph, or telling one of them, get up. Herod's still going to kill the baby. Take off. So he goes, okay, now we're going to go. So what do? They take off. They go all the way down into Africa. Okay, so now Jesus and Mary, they're exiled. They're refugees. They're down here in Africa. Why is Matthew doing this? Well, because later they're going to misquote Hosea. I think it's 1:1. Anyway, we're going to do a whole night on how they've fudged. They're purposely doing things to try to make Jesus look like the Messiah. And one of the things that they do is they both feel like they have to come out of Bethlehem, Jesus born there, because that's going to prove he's from the bloodline of David, which is no. You got to have the daddy records. And they don't have daddy records because they said daddy's God and not Joseph. As a matter of fact, one of the Gospels shows the bloodline we'll go over that tomorrow maybe. Completely fudges the bloodline to make it look like they're from Joseph. Matthew completely fudges the bloodline to make it look like from Joseph. But one's a bloodline of Mary, and you can't do that. You can't. Anyway, a whole nother story. So in Hosea 1:1 or something like that, it says, out of Africa I brought my son. And people say, and they actually quote this in the New Testament. Jesus, out of Africa I brought my son. So that's why they made up this part 2 of this story, is where they had to go down to Africa, to Egypt, and then make a pit stop. And then another angel comes to Joseph or whoever and says, okay, another message. What's the message now? King Herod is dead and you can go home. So the first time they came down this road, and I can't remember what it's called. This is the way of, it's called the way of something. And then this is called the way of the sea. So there's a pathway to get down this side. There's a pathway to get up and down this side. I know this one's called the way of the sea, the way by the sea or something. So they're saying that once Herod was dead, another angel came. Angels are constantly giving messages. Another angel told him, okay, all cleared. You can go home now. So then they went by the way of the sea back to Nazareth. So that is the story, Matthew's story that we're going to hear. All right. Which is so different. Oh, and then in Hosea 1, or whatever it is it 1? I can't remember. But it's in chapter 1 of Hosea. It says, out of Africa, I brought my son. They said, bam, there he is. He came out of Africa. It's Jesus. It's the Messiah. No, they're not talking about the Messiah. It is actually the very next sentence. It says, my children, Israel. God is talking about his children in Israel. His children he brought out of Israel. Why? He's referring to bringing them out of Egypt. It's a story about bringing his children out of Egypt. It's not about a Messiah being born in Africa. Goodness. Anyway, so let's read the story. Let me find it though first. I gotta let me see. Matthew, Jesus' birth. I tried to pull this up before, but I had so many tabs open when it wouldn't load. All right, the birth of Jesus Christ according to Matthew. Matthew's got quite a different story, doesn't he? In fact, let me see something about it. Let me shut some. I wish I had the blue letter Bible up. Would have been better, I think. Hold on a second. All right. Anyway, so here we are in Matthew, the birth of Jesus Christ. That's what his story is, huh? All right. The birth of Jesus Christ. All right. And this is in found in the first chapter of Matthew. They had just gone through. They exhaustively went through a completely made up bloodline of Jesus right before this. And I can go through that tomorrow. I'll show you how off the bloodline is. They just made up. So right before this, they made up the bloodline, a fake bloodline, to make it. They fudged a bloodline to make it look like he came from the King David, which I'll show you tomorrow night. It's not. It doesn't match anything in the Old Testament. It doesn't match the moms, the dads of anybody. Well, actually, some of it is true, and then they missed a whole bunch. They added some. They took away some. Anyway, completely fudged. So here's Matthew's story on the birth of Jesus Christ. Let's hear what his is. Now, the birth of Jesus Christ took place in this way. He's telling you his way. Forget what Luke just said. No, it's this way. When his mother Mary had been betrothed to Jesus, all right, so it was like an engagement. Once they got engaged, before they came together, she was found to be a child from the Holy Spirit. And her husband Joseph, being a just man and unwilling to put her to shame, resolved to divorce her quietly. And divorce, they're using modern terms with marriage and divorce, okay? And he actually so he already paid for her. She's like in the shipping phase, and he wants to ship her back. That's really how it is back then, because women were property of men. They purchased them and they sold them or whatever, just like a goat or a mule or whatever. Anyway, so they're using modern terms here. But anyway, and her husband Joseph, being a just man and unwilling to put her to shame, resolved to divorce her quietly. But as he considered these things, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, okay, so yeah, so Matthew, you'll see in Matthew, the angel always goes to Joseph. And for the most part, I think the whole time, I'm not sure. But so where we had in Luke, the angel goes and talks to Mary. In Matthew, the angel talks to Joseph. So he finds out she's pregnant. And her husband Joseph, being a just man, unwilling to put her to shame, resolved to divorce her quietly. But as he considered these things, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David. Now, it is funny because in Matthew is going to actually claim Joseph is the father of Jesus, okay? Because they have Joseph, the bloodline going right down to Joseph and claiming Joseph is Jesus' daddy. All right. And this Joseph does come from the bloodline of David, according to the bloodlines. So they're using Joseph to prove that he's from the bloodline of David. Well, then by default, Joseph has to be the daddy, because you can't show up with a DNA test saying you're the daddy. I'm the great grandson of David, great grandson. I'm from the line of David. I'm his daddy. Well, you know what I mean? You can't have it both ways. So Joseph, son of David, do not fear to take Mary as your wife, for that which is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. Okay, stop right there. You can't have it both ways. The daddy cannot be the Holy Spirit and Joseph, the son of David. The only way you're going to prove that he's from the bloodline of David and qualified to be the Messiah is if you have a bloodline. And so they're trying to have it both ways. They're saying he's from the bloodline of David. They're trying to tell you he's born in Bethlehem. A second clue he's trying to tell you. They just went through a fudged up bloodline, which was completely off, and we'll prove it tomorrow. He just fudged a bloodline to try to say he's from the bloodline of David. He's saying Joseph, Mary's husband, is from the bloodline of David. They're born in Bethlehem, which is the birthplace of David. So they're trying to build a case why Jesus is from this messianic bloodline. But then they pull a fast one and say he was conceived by God, the Holy Spirit. So wait a minute, you can't have it both ways. But if you don't know Jewish laws and all that, all their traditions and their customs and everything, you wouldn't know it. Anyway, she will bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had spoken to the prophet. Okay, so this is what I just was talking about. I was just talking about this. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel. You know what's? I'm going to say a few things about this. This is in Isaiah. Number one, did they call him Emmanuel? No. And by the way, this Emmanuel here is actually supposed to be with the E. They spelt it wrong. And they shall call him Emmanuel. This is supposed to be with an E. And the word, which means God with us. It does mean God with us. And you know who that was? That was a prophecy in Isaiah. And that prophecy did come true. And that prophecy was somebody's son. And I can't remember who it is. This prophecy already came true. And this virgin here in the Old Testament, the word, the Hebrew word for virgin is something like Beulah or Bula or something like whatever. It means young woman. Young woman. It does not mean a virgin like the Romans. To the Romans, virgin means a girl that's never been with a man. To the Hebrews, a virgin means young woman. So again, the Roman writers or whatever, Greek writers or whatever, these people do not understand these words. They misinterpreted the word virgin. All through the Old Testament, virgin, like I said, Beulah or whatever the word that comes from, means young woman, which is, which is like when they said virgin, it would mean like if a man wanted a woman, he would get a virgin, he would get a young woman. Why? So she can conceive children and probably look good for them. Who knows? All right. So what's his name? What for? Like I said, you go back to go look at Isaiah, this prophecy. His name is supposed to be with the E, and this Emmanuel was already born. He's already in the Old Testament. This prophecy's come and gone. It was a young woman who did give birth to a boy named Emmanuel, and that was already anyway. Was Jesus ever called Emmanuel, even nicknamed, or I don't know? No, nobody ever called him that. Anyway, when Joseph woke from his sleep, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded to him. He took his wife, but he knew her not until she had given birth to a son. He called his name Jesus. Well, wait a minute. You're supposed to call him Emmanuel. Call his name Emmanuel. And then they called him Jesus. Why don't they call him Emmanuel? You'd be a little bit closer on fulfilling this prophecy. Anyway, you know what I mean? What's up with that? All right, now here we go. The visit of the wise men. The wise men are actually magi. They're magicians and they're astrologers. And just wrap your mind around that. What in the heck are magicians and astrologers doing in this story? I mean, no wonder the Jewish people rejected these gospels. They're like, what? Now magicians and astrologers show up in this story? Like, what are they doing in this story? It's like all of a sudden, a seal with a ball on his nose go by and clowns juggling bowling pins. Like, what are these people doing in this story? Why are magicians and astrologers in this story? Anyway, I'll keep going. The visit of the wise men. And I don't know what I got the English version up here. But yeah, you could look this up. They're magicians and astrologers. So I don't know how they got in the story, but there's no prophecy in the Old Testament about magicians and astrologers showing up with the Messiah. Anyway, who's counting, right? Chapter 2. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod. Okay, wait a minute. The days of what? Remember what did Luke say? What did he say? It was Constantine? I can't remember. But anyway, in this story, though, Jesus is born in the days of Herod because we need Herod the bad guy. Herod was a horrible person. Um, and so we need this horrible person in this story because he's going to chase everybody down to Bethlehem because, hey, if Jesus is born in Bethlehem, bam, Messiah. All right. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod, the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose. So Jesus has a star, I guess, and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Okay, that's weird. Why is all Jerusalem troubled? I don't know, because magicians are following a star. I don't know. And assembling all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them whether Christ was to be born. They told him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet. They got a new reason why he's in Bethlehem. And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people of Israel. So, who do you think this was? Anybody guess? This is King David. King David. All right. Then Herod summoned the wise. So they're taking it. In fact, we could do a whole live stream out of all the times they take prophecy and just completely molest it and twist it and try to make it. It's like somebody taking a balloon and tying it in knots and making it into like a poodle or something. Anyway, you could take something and tie it in knots and make it look like a rabbit or something like, and that's what they do with these scriptures. They like take them, twist them and tie them, and then all of a sudden it's something else. And we could do a whole stream about that. When Herod summoned the wise men secretly and discerned from them, or ascertained from them, what time the star had appeared, and he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, go and search diligently for the child. When you found him, bring me word that I too may come and worship him. After listening to the king, they went on their way. And behold, the star that they had seen when it rose before them came before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. So, wrap your mind around this. These magicians and astrologers are following a star. Okay, they're following a star because they're following the star because they're looking for the Christ. And when they're following the star, for some reason, they really don't say, but for some reason, the GPS star stops working. And they have to stop off in Jerusalem and get King Herod involved. Now, why are they asking King Herod? He just told you, I don't know nothing about it. Why are you asking King Herod? He don't know about nothing. Where is he who's born a king of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose, and we came to worship him. Okay, so wrap your mind around this. They came from where? I can show you a map. They came from across the country following this star. Somehow, and I could show you the map. Here, where's the map? I'll show you where they are. Oh, where's the map? Anyway, you know how it goes from north to south? We just saw the map. So picture the map. So they're coming from north going south. They're coming down, following the star. Here, I gotta find that map. I'm gonna show you how ridiculous this is. All right, where's the dang map? So they've okay. Here's the map. All right. So they're coming from. So they're coming from Nazareth. Actually, I don't know where they're coming from. The wise men. Well, they call them wise men, but they're astrologers and magi, which are magicians. Like I said, what are they doing in the story? I don't know. So they just told you these magicians and astrologers told you they came from. I forgot where they said they came from, but they're following the star. They're following the star, and somehow when they get to here in Jerusalem, I don't know if the star quit working, but all of a sudden they got to run in the temple, or not in the temple. They have to run in Jerusalem and ask the king himself. How did they get access to the king? I don't know, but they asked the king, "Oh king, where's this baby being born?" And the king's like, "What are you talking about?" They're like, "Well, we were following a star all the way down to here, and I don't know. For some reason we got to stop off and ask you and get you involved because you're going to be the bad guy that chases them down here where we need to chase them." So anyway, as they come down, the wise men, I don't know, the star. They said we're following a star. I don't know where's the baby. Then he's like, "I don't know." Then he goes, "Okay." So then, as soon as King Herod doesn't know anything about the baby or any star or anything, all of a sudden they say, "Okay," and then they leave, and they pick up the star again. So the GPS star brings them from the star starts working again. So they follow the star again to right over the house where Jesus is living as a 2-year-old. Maybe India. Vedic astrology is big into predicting kings and states. Yeah, they are. They are, and they are astrologists. They're you know, they're people predicting the future, and you know what? Kings and all kinds of people like that. They use astrologers all the time, and people. Let me get back to this. Yep. All right. So does this make any sense? They're following a star, but somehow when they get near Jerusalem, maybe it was too much light pollution, but they can't find the star. Then they stop off in Jerusalem and ask the king himself, "Hey, Herod." First of all, he said, "How'd you get in here? And you're foreigners. Why are you even here?" But anyway, they asked King Herod, "Well, we lost track of the star. We saw the star when it rose. Anyway, we lost track of it. We need your help." He's like, "I don't know anything about no baby being born. But hey, when you find them, let me know." They're like, "Yeah, can do." So then they left. And everybody in Jerusalem was troubled because of this. That makes no sense. And this is kind of funny because Herod secretly, he summoned the wise men secretly. So what did Herod tell everybody else to leave the room? And then he secretly asked the wise men and ascertained from them what time this star appeared, at what time, and then sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and diligently search for the child. When you found him, bring him back to me. Or bring me word." I'm sorry, not bring him back. "Bring me word that I may too come worship him." After listening to the king, they went on their way, and behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them. So all of a sudden, the star came back. Herod didn't help out at all. So really, it was no use to even do this. Why would they even go there? Let's just wait and wait for the star to come back. But anyway, the star comes back. Herod don't know nothing. But now he's involved. Okay, so now the plot thickens. Now you got a bad guy in the picture that's going to chase Jesus and the family out of the country. Otherwise, Herod wouldn't have a reason to chase him out of the country and get down in Africa and, you know, fulfill that Hosea 1 prophecy. All right. And so when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. So actually, and get this. So the star, this is what I was talking about last night. So the star came to rest over the place where the child was. So that star, I mean, it was like a drone. It went right over their house. All right. What house? I thought Jesus was laying in a manger in a stable somewhere. Nope, they're living in a house. It even says, some versions say the house. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, not a manger, they saw the child, not a baby, he's a 2-year-old now, with Mary and his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, which is pretty much anointing stuff, and gold. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, more dreams, they departed to their own way, to their own country by another way. Now, they got to fulfill this Hosea 1 out of Egypt, which is not even a prophecy of the Messiah. So flight to Egypt. Now, when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. And so here it's another, again, the angel always comes to Joseph in these dreams, not Mary. Luke, the angel goes to Mary. Joseph, in Matthew, the angel goes to Joseph. And the angel said, rise, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. And he rose and took the child and his mother by night and departed to Egypt and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill the Lord. Okay, here's what I'm talking about. This is in Hosea. I'm going to show you Hosea. This was to fulfilled what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. And this is Prophet Hosea. Out of Egypt I called my son. So all this, so Jesus could come out of Egypt, called my son. I'm going to show you where they get that from. I think it's Hosea 1. I can't remember though. Give me a second. I'll find it. I think it's Hosea 1:1 or 1:11 or something. I can't remember. I think it's 1:1. But I'll find it. Here it's Hosea 1. Actually, I could just look up the quote here. Let me Google it. Out of Egypt I brought my son.
According to web.mit.edu, Bible Gateway Hosea chapter 11, Niv. When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. But the more I called Israel, the further they went from me. They sacrificed to the Baals and they burned incense to images.
Bam. There's your Hosea. When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. That's not Jesus. So it's 11:1. I said 1:11. It's okay. It's 11:1. I know it's a bunch of ones in it. Right here. All right. Ready for this? They said that was to, I'm going to show you. That was to fulfill. I'm going to show you what they just falsely prophesied. So Jesus is down in Egypt, right, as a baby. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. They're talking about prophet Hosea 11:1. This was to fulfill. Okay, so we went down to Egypt. This was to fulfill. This is they're fudging this. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. Quote, out of Egypt I called my son. This is what they're fudging. This is what they're doing. Hosea 11:1. I get them mixed up. When Israel, here, this is what I'm going to show you what they took out of context. The end of this sentence. Out of Egypt I called my son. This is Hosea 11, verse 1. But they left the beginning off. Here's what it really says. They cherry picked this right here and said, there's a prophecy of Jesus. Out of Egypt I called my son. That's what they just quoted. Here's the full context of it. When Israel was a child, I loved him. Israel, he's talking about his people that he brought out of Egypt after being in there for 430 years in captivity. This is what they're talking about. The people that brought the Israelites, they got brought out of Egypt. This is what this is. When Israel was a child, I loved him. And out of Egypt, I called my son. Who's the son? Israel. But the more I called Israel, the further they went from me. They sacrificed to Baals and they burned incense to images. Okay, is this Jesus? In fact, he's disappointed in this person, these people. But they're trying to say this, out of Egypt, I called my son. See, bam, proof he's the prophet. In fact, this isn't even a messianic prophecy. Look it up yourself. Hosea 11, verse 1. You'll see that this is bullcrap. This was to fill the Lord had spoken to the prophet. Out of Egypt I called my son. Okay. Then Herod kills all the children, which there's no record. Everybody kept records of all the nasty things that Herod did. There's records, Josephus, there's records, I don't even know all the names. There's many, many records of how horrible Herod was. There's no record of Herod killing everybody under 2 years old. And why would he? All the people that lived there are his workers, his relatives, his friends' children. He'd be killing his own children. So it makes no sense, and there's no record of it. Like, why would he do? If you're king of the land and they're all your relatives, why would you go kill everybody under 2? Makes no sense, and it never happened. No record of it. There's record of all the horrible things he did. Zero record of any babies being killed. Anyway, Herod kills the children. Then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious, and he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had ascertained from the wise men. That then was fulfilled what was spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. Oh my goodness, here we go again. Falsely taken prophecies and twisting them and tying them like a balloon. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and loud lamentation. Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be comforted because they were no more. Hello. Rachel weeping for her children. This is a fulfilled prophecy. And by the way, a voice was heard in Ramah. Really? Is this where Herod killed all the babies? And is there another Rachel? Anyway, we'll get into this some other night. I'm getting annoyed. Yeah, I'm just gonna finish this up. Anyway, when the return to Nazareth. So then, okay, this has been 2 years. 2 years since Jesus has been born. I don't know how long it's going to take to walk back from Africa all the way back up to northern part of Israel, whatever. Anyway, they returned to Nazareth. But when Herod died, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to who? Joseph, because that's the only one the angel talks to in Matthew. The angel of the Lord appeared to dream in Joseph, saying, Rise, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who sought the child's life are dead. And he rose and took the child and his mother and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea in the place of his father Herod, yep, he was afraid to go there. And being warned in a dream, another dream, he withdrew, and they withdrew to the district of Galilee. And he went and lived in the city called Nazareth, so that was spoken by the prophets that might be fulfilled, that he would be called a Nazarene. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to challenge anybody. That's the end of that story. Show me one place in the Old Testament, and I'm going to tell you right now, there is no place. There's not one prophecy in the Old Testament. I challenge anybody, go find it. It should be easy. Type in Nazarene. There is nowhere that prophesies that the Messiah would be a Nazarene. Nowhere. So this is a totally made up prophecy. Look for yourself. When they said it is written or prophecy or they're quoting the Old Testament, you better check on it. I have. And there is not one place that says that the Messiah would be called a Nazarene. Was spoken by the prophets might be fulfilled, that he would be called a Nazarene. I'm going to wrap it up there, and I'm going to challenge anybody, go find, show me one prophecy where they said he'd be a Nazarene. None. And as a matter of fact, if he lived in Nazareth, that doesn't make him a Nazarene. He wasn't born there. And did he take a Nazarene oath, a Nazarite oath or whatever? No. Nope. But Jesus did things that Nazarenes don't do. So anyway, that's probably about it. This kind of went a little longer. I could go a lot further on this. I could. Here, let me just see, make sure, because I could go another half hour on this, but I won't. Let's see here. Let's see if there's anything. Oh. So that's why when you see this picture here, remember what I said last night? Again, that's why this picture said, now you get this picture. If you didn't know this before, now you do, and you get this picture. Some of these people really don't belong in this picture. Now if you didn't know before, you know now. Who doesn't belong in this picture with Jesus and a baby in a manger? These magicians don't. The astrologer magicians do not belong in this picture. By the time they came, Mary and Joseph were living in a house. Jesus was 2 years old in a house. They never saw Jesus as a baby in a manger. So this one don't belong, this one don't belong, and that one don't belong. And that's why these church plays are a joke. I grew up in church and I was in these plays, and then I saw my kids in the plays, and oh boy. And shame on the church for just covering it all up, or not, and I don't know. Some of these pastors, they don't know the Bible at all, so they really haven't studied and think it's all one big story. You know what I mean? I think some of them do know. I don't know. I'm looking for something, a certain map I'm going to show real quick, if I can find it. Oh, and by the way, I don't think in Matthew that Mary and Joseph started out in Nazareth. I think they started out in Bethlehem. So it says, here's the difference between Matthew and Luke. Both of them, a man named Joseph from the house of David was the daddy, virgin betrothed. An angel visited in Nazareth here, and that was Mary. Miraculous conception in both, because you need the virgin birth for the pagans. There's most are gods are pagan gods that have virgin births, and not necessarily like all the gods, the Roman and the Greek gods and the Olympian gods. Well, not even Olympian gods. I'm going to stick more to the I'll stick to the Roman and the Greek gods because this is who's writing these stories, because they have the dying and the rising gods, the sun gods. They die and they rise 3 days later. They always have that in the pagan, and they also have the virgin birth, and not necessarily like every one of the pagan gods in Rome, had a mother that was never married. It could be a birth like what was it, Tamaramis, Samurai. It was anyway, like some of them get pregnant with a lightning bolt. Another got pregnant with the rays of the sun. Another got pregnant with and one of them, the one guy sewed the kid up in his thigh until the kid was born. Who was that one? We just went over that one. He was sewed up inside somebody's thigh, the dad's thigh, until it was born. So they have weird births, but they're not conceived. They're conceived a different way, not naturally. So it's an unnaturally conceived birth. Not necessarily had to be a virgin, but so both of them, Jesus was born in Bethlehem, but in Luke, Joseph starts out in Nazareth, goes to Bethlehem, and back to Nazareth. But in Matthew, they I can't remember where they came from, if it's Bethlehem to start, because he ends up settling in Matthew. He settles in Nazareth. He settles there by the Sea of Galilee in Nazareth. But and in Luke, they go back to Nazareth because that's where they're from. And then his early years in Luke are in Nazareth also. So, yeah, I think that might do it. Like I said, I could go on and on. There's a lot of sources that you can look up. Here, in fact, here's another one. I mean, like I said, I could go for a long time on this, but here's another one. Can you explain the problem with the census in the Gospel of Luke's story of the birth of Jesus? There's a lot of people gone over this. A big problem with the census. Oh, in those days, a decree went out from Emperor Augustus. Remember, Herod or Augustus, and all the world should be registered. There are a couple problems with the census. First, Quirinius and Herod the Great did not rule at the same time. Herod the Great died in 4 BC. In fact, and the fact alone causes you some hesitation. The fact that Jesus must have been born 4 to 7 years before Christ. All right. So anyway, Herod the Great died in 4 BC, okay? So he died in 4 BC. So Jesus would have had to have been born before that. Herod the Great, all right? And yet, Publius Sulpicius Quirinius wasn't appointed as a governor of Syria until 6 CE. So do you see how Matthew and Luke does not match? It's like saying Jimmy Carter was president and or Trump was president and George Bush was vice president or something. It's just like you can't do that. It's not at the same time. So it just can't be. The two stories are so far gone. And anyway, so anyway, Herod the Great died in 4 BCE, and yet Publius Quirinius wasn't appointed as the governor of Syria until 6 CE. That is well after Herod the Great died, and after Herod's son and successor Archelaus was banished as ruler of Judea. What does this mean? It means that Quirinius didn't rule until 10 years after Herod the Great had died. Bam, completely debunked. This means that there's no way that Quirinius could have called a census while Herod the Great was king. Herod had been dead for a decade, and this means that Jesus couldn't have been born both during the reign of Herod the Great and during Quirinius the census of Quirinius. Now, Quirinius did order a census, but like it says, it was 10 years before that. So it's not possible. The chronology is off by a decade, 10 years. So if you're alive if you're born when Quirinius is, when his census went out, you cannot be born 10 years later when Herod is the king. You know what I mean? You can't be born at 10 years and later after you already been born. Unless you're born again, right? At the very least, it's his historical mistake recorded in the Bible. Either Luke wrote down the name of the wrong governor or there was no census. Luke used the census as a literary device to bring Mary and Joseph of Bethlehem to Judea so Joseph of Nazareth would be born in Bethlehem. Jesus of Nazareth would be born in Bethlehem, but we'll come back to that problem in a second. There's a second problem with the census in Luke 2. Simply put, Romans did not require subjects to return to their ancestral homes to be counted. Rather, they made them return to their present homes. To explain this, I'll refer to you what I wrote in this article. First, the census were taken for the purpose of taxation. Although there are certainly literary records of census taking place throughout the Roman Empire at this time, there's no evidence that those who were being counted were required to travel to their ancestral hometowns in order to be counted. Indeed, an Egyptian census indicative of Gaius Maximus, the Roman prefect of Egypt from 103 to 107, did require that all persons for any reason whatsoever are absent from their home districts to be alerted to return to their own hearts, their own homes, that they may completely formally register. So, anyway, that's order. It's kind of a long article. I'm not going to read it all, but it just shows you that that the census was just like they said, a literary an excuse to get them down into Bethlehem so they can, I don't know, claim that he's a Messiah, which, like I said, there's a lot of problems with that story. Oops. Anyway, all right, well, I'll wrap it up now. I do want to look for one more map. Let me show you the way. I'll find that map where they went down and they came back by the way of the sea. Huh. There's one map. Yeah, here it is. But here it is. I'm going to shrink it down a little bit. But here's the route that they said they took. Here's the Mediterranean Sea. So, in Luke's version, they lived in Nazareth, went down to Bethlehem. The baby was born unexpectedly. The wise men, the shepherds in the field saw him. They got him registered at Jerusalem. They went back to Nazareth. In Matthew's story, it sounds like they were already in Bethlehem, or they're actually in Judea countryside. So they're somewhere in this area, somewhere here. But they were chased. I think they said northern. So they're here somewhere, which could have been Nazareth. But anyway, they're here. They don't specify. But anyway, they get chased down here to Bethlehem by Herod, the monster. And then after Bethlehem, Joseph gets another dream, and they take off to Egypt by the way of shore. I was trying to think of that word, by the way of shore. So they went down this way, all the way into Egypt, into Africa. And this was to fulfill the Hosea 11:1 prophecy. Out of Africa I brought my Israelites. The Israelites, who I'm so disappointed in how horrible and rotten you are. Is that the prophecy of Jesus? He just got done saying that they're worshiping false gods. So anyway, if Hosea 11:1 is about Jesus, Jesus is in trouble with the rest of them. Anyways, and then after everything calmed down and the smoke it was all clear, then they went by the way of the sea. They went up this way along the Mediterranean up here, Joppa, and everything else went back to And they said, and they settled in Nazareth so they could fulfill that prophecy. He would be called a Nazarene. No, there's no prophecy that said the Messiah is going to be a Nazarene. Find one. I challenge anybody. Find that prophecy. There is none. But either way, he's born in Bethlehem. Here's what's important to Matthew. That he's born in Bethlehem, somehow comes out of Africa, and ends up in Nazareth. Luke says, I'm from Nazareth, born in Bethlehem, back to Nazareth. So they both want him born in Bethlehem and living out his life in Nazareth, because that's what matches the rest of the story. How they get there, you just saw it. They had their own ways. One took a boat and one took a plane. Two completely different voyages there, how to get there, wasn't it? Anyway, so I'll say goodnight to everybody. Well, thank you for coming in. Good to see you tonight, Galax Artist. India, Vedic astrology, big into predicting kings. You know, it probably is. And that's in India, which is not, you know, it wouldn't even be coming out of Hebrew, out of their prophecies or their scriptures or anything like that. But yeah, it does sound like they took some other, you know, some other religion or belief and put it into this story. All right, guys, well, I'm going to say goodnight. Thanks for coming in. If you're listening on the replay, thanks for listening on the replay. If you came in tonight, thanks for coming in tonight. Let's see here. Get back. Yeah, and check out James' channel. I like James Apperson. I like his videos. He will give you a different I think it's funny. He'll give you a eye opener on how ridiculous some of this stuff is. I'm trying to get back to my channel here, but I can't. I wanted to check out my chat before I got off of here because I can't really see on my phone. Oh wait. Let me go on my laptop. I got way too many tabs open, so it's not wanting to cooperate. But anyway, let me pull up my phone real quick, see if there's a comment section. Anyway, so good night. Thanks for coming in, John. It was good to see you tonight. Good night to Keto Cheeto. Good to see you. Good night to John Dane. It was great to see you too. Good to see all you guys. And Grace, good to see you. Omar, good to see you. Galax, good to see you. Thank you for coming in. Anyway, good night, everybody. And hope to see you tomorrow night. Have a good rest of the evening, day, night, wherever it is for you. And ciao.